Hi, I'm Madison and welcome to my book channel. So you're probably here for one of two reasons. The first being you're new to reading and you want to get back into reading and you don't know where to start. The other one is if you're in a book slump. Either way, I have some good book recommendations for you. So I have gathered a list of 10 books that I think are super fun and easy to read and are super fast-paced that I think will get you back into reading super quick. If you like this idea and want to see more, let me know by subscribing and liking this video. So let's get into it. The first book I have here is Funny You Should Ask by Elisa Sussman. This is an adult romance and it's set in the then and now timeline. It is also second chance romance. So this follows our main character named Chani, and she is a journalist and she has the opportunity to interview this new up-and-coming movie star named Gabe. So she hangs out with him for about a weekend and something between them may happen. Our other timeline is the now timeline, and it's 10 years later where she is asked to do another interview with Gabe and they haven't seen each other since. So this book is really cute and I loved seeing kind of the inside scoop on a movie star's life as well as the then and now timeline from how they were that weekend versus how they are now. If you were looking for something YA, I would go with Everything Everything by Nicola Yoon. This one has been made into a movie and I'll talk about that in a second, but this was one of my favorite books when I was a little bit younger. This is about our main character who is really sick. She's, for all intents and purposes, kind of allergic to the outside world. She can't go outside and her mom hires a nurse to come in and she's living kind of a simple life. She has to stay inside. She always wears white shirts. And one day, a new boy moves in next door and she becomes super intrigued with this boy. And it kind of goes through her thoughts and feelings as she sees this guy next door. I was obsessed with this book when I was in high school, and I think that if I read it now, I would still be obsessed. I just loved watching this story unfold and I loved the characters. This is a romance, but there's so much more to the story just because of her being sick and everything. It's a little bit mixed media. Let me try to find a page to show you. So it has little drawings and different things that her nurse is writing down and different things that she's drawing. Here's another. And I just think everything about this is so fun. They also made a movie that I feel like they did pretty well. So if you want to read this and then watch the movie, it's a great idea. Now this next one I am currently reading, but I just can't not include this on the list. This is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This one is also a romance, but it has kind of a magical realism twist to it. It's about this girl named Clementine, and she has always been really close to her aunt who lives in an apartment in New York City. And her aunt would always tell her stories about how this apartment is magical and can time travel back 7 years, but she's never experienced it herself and she kind of doesn't believe it anymore. She thought that it was just a fun story that her aunt was telling her. After her aunt passes away, she moves into this apartment, and one day she comes home and there's a stranger in her apartment. So it follows as she kind of learns more about this stranger in her apartment from 7 years in the past. But one of her aunt's rules is to never fall in love in this apartment, and she might be headed that way. Clementine also works in the publishing industry as a publicist, and I think that is so cool to kind of get a look in and see everything on the back end of that. So this one has been so fun and super easy to get through and quick to read. Now here is one of my favorite books of all time. It's Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. They also adapted this one into a TV show and I think they did a phenomenal job. So read this first and then watch the TV show. I promise you it's so worth it. So this book is about a band in the 70s, but it's written a little bit different than you would expect. This book is written solely in interview format. So it has the character's name and then what they are saying. It's kind of like a transcription of the interview. I didn't know what to think about this writing style at the beginning, but I ended up loving it. And you can get just as immersed into this world and their stories as you would a normal book. And I just fell in love with Daisy and all the other members of the band. It follows their story as Daisy goes from a nobody into the lead singer of this band, and they're falling out. So the interviews are taking place well after this band has been broken up, Everything about this book is so good, and the way that they adapted it to the screen is just so amazing. In the back here, the author included all of the songs that they mention in the story in their albums. And when they adapted it into a TV show, these songs came alive, and it's just the best. You can listen to these songs while you're reading, and I just think that experience would be so amazing. Also, if you're looking for a good audiobook, this one is a full cast of characters. So because it's in the interview format, all of these characters have a different actor. I haven't listened to the audiobook, but I've heard it's so good. Next, if you're wanting more of a mystery with a little bit of romance thrown in, you should read The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This follows our main character named Avery, and she's in high school, and she is basically living out of her car because her parents have passed away, so she's kind of homeless. And one day she gets called into the principal's office, and there is a boy named Grayson there who lets her know that she has been written into this wealthy man's will, and she needs to come with him to the reading of this will. Now, she doesn't know who this man is, and she's never met him, so she's a little concerned, but she goes anyways, and she ends up being the sole heir to the inheritance, which, as you can probably guess, makes his whole family really mad. And one of the requirements for her to receive this inheritance is that she has to live in the Hawthorne mansion for a year until she can gain the inheritance. So it follows her as she is living in this big mansion with a bunch of people who kind of hate her, and there is a little bit of a love triangle between her and a couple of the boys. So this book is full of twists and turns and mysteries being solved. There are 2 more books in the series and a spin-off book, so if you end up liking this one, you have a ton of others that you know you're gonna like as well. Next on the list is a YA fantasy romance called Powerless by Lauren Roberts. You might have seen this on TikTok. The author kind of documented her journey writing this book, and it got everyone excited for it. And I have got to say, this book is worth the hype. So people have been comparing this a little bit to Hunger Games, and I will tell you why. This is dual POV, so it follows 2 different characters. The first one is Peyton, and she is a thief. She is kind of slumming it, and she is what they call an ordinary, which means she has no powers. It also follows Kai, which is the prince, and he is an elite, so he has powers. And the king is trying to get rid of all the ordinaries, so Peyton is kind of in hiding. She pretends that she has powers, and in this kingdom they have what is called the trials, which is where a few kids are called to the kingdom to participate in 3 trials. And this is where they can show off their abilities and gain votes and kind of make a name for themselves. So the object of these trials isn't to have only one winner like the Hunger Games, but the trial aspect is kind of the same. Peyton and Kai both are called as participants in the trials, and so it follows them as they are participating in these trials, as well as kind of forming a relationship between them. The catch is Kai is what they call the enforcer. He basically does all the king's dirty work, and since the king wants all these ordinaries gone, Kai is the one that goes on his errands. So not only do we have a really good enemies to lovers, we also have the intrigue of the trials as well as all the politics that is involved in this kingdom that wants Peyton dead. If you are just getting into fantasy, this is a great place to start. It has all of the amazing tropes that you would find in fantasy, but since it's YA, it's super easy to get through, even though it's a little thicker. I read this one so quick, and there is no complicated world building in this story. It is all fun all the way through. This one is also the first in a series, but it's not out yet, so you have plenty of time to get through this one and be ready for when the next one comes out, which I think is around June. Next is another romance. This is Anna and the French Kiss by Stephanie Perkins. This follows a girl as she is studying abroad in France, and it details her life at school and this new French boy that she meets. That is kind of all you need to know about this story. It just follows her in boarding school and the friends that she meets abroad and all the fun adventures she goes on. This character is also obsessed with movies, so if you love movies, you would love the references in this book as well. Now, one of my favorite romances of all time, it's Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. Let me tell you about this book. So this is Childhood Friends to Lovers. It's about our main character named Macy. And when she was younger, her and her dad had a weekend home where they would go stay for vacations or over the weekend, and it was next door to this boy named Elliot. Macy and Elliot had formed this friendship that was so easy that they could just be together and they didn't even have to talk. They were always hanging out together while she was there, and they both are book lovers, which was a really fun part of this book. Something happened in the past that we don't know about, and Macy and Elliot haven't talked for years. In the present day, they come across each other again, and it stirs up all of these old emotions. In this book, you also get to see the past and present timelines, so as you go through the book, you start learning more and more about their past, and watching them rekindle their friendship in the future, and maybe more. This romance is just so happy and a little bit nostalgic as we follow them in the past. This one is also super easy to get through. You will just fall in love with these characters. Here is another book that I loved in high school. This one is a little bit sadder. It's called All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven, and they also made a Netflix movie on this one, which I will say it again, they did a really good job. So this follows two different perspectives. We have Finch and Violet, and they're both in high school, and they're both struggling in their own ways. Violet's sister recently passed away, and she is having a really hard time with that. And Finch is fascinated by death, so he is kind of an outcast. They end up working on a high school project together where they have to go on a couple adventures and log their thoughts on these adventures. It follows as Finch is getting Violet out of her shell, and they help each other with their problems that they're having. They're able to confide in each other and find love in each other. This one is so good and will have you sobbing by the end. If you are wanting to go into this one, make sure to check the trigger warnings first. And last but not least, I have another romance for you. This is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This one got pretty popular on TikTok, and this author writes women in STEM romances. This follows a PhD student named Olive, and she doesn't believe in long-lasting relationships, and her best friend is trying to change that. She ends up telling her best friend that she is on a date, but she just goes to the lab. But when she runs into her best friend there, she grabs the first man she can find and kisses him to try to cover her lie. Now, this man ends up being a hotshot professor who is known for being really grumpy. This professor is not her professor, so it's nothing weird, but after this kiss, they strike up a deal to fake date to help satisfy Olive's best friend and to help this professor gain a grant that will help him in his research. So as you can tell, this book is a fake dating romance that follows two scientists. It also touches on a few more serious topics, so if you're looking to pick this one up, also make sure to look up these trigger warnings before you get started. And that is all 10 of the book recommendations that I have if you are just getting back into reading or if you are in a reading slump and looking to get out of it. Let me know if you enjoyed these book recommendations, and if you've read any of these books, I would love to hear what you thought of them down below. Let me know if you want to see more book recommendations or if you have anything else that you want to see next. Bye!